It was the summer of 2021. I had gathered D&D friends acquired over the years for a 6-player run of Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus. It was early in my Dungeon Master career, and I was definitely too ambitious. Our party comprised of Rylug, the Orc Fighter, Zydarius, the Tiefling Paladin, Waylun, the Kobold Monk, Kira, the Tiefling Sorcerer, Hrothgar, the Human Barbarian, and Orlin, the Human Wizard. These last three made me want to quit DMing forever. The campaign went as they usually do for Dungeon Masters, teetering between joy and misery. The party became employed by the Flaming Fist to investigate a dungeon inhabited by the dead 3 cultists under a bathhouse. They fight cultists, and Kira had no shame in blatantly cheating in combat, then acting surprised when his past 6 rolls haven't been lower than a 16. His greatest hits are rolling, then quickly swiping the die before the number was even visible, and then shouting out a number. Rolling, then finessing it to a higher number closest to whatever he rolled. Straight up just lying and bumping his totals up if no one watched him roll. I will never understand the joy in faking numbers in an imagination game. Sessions drag on, and they discover some dastardly Van Thamper secrets in the bathhouse with the help of NPCs Rhea and Mortlock, a friendly paladin and the estranged Van Thamper's son, who later pummeled information out of his brother Ambric in a valley after a bar fight. Combat mechanics are being thrown around left and right, and this makes Hrothgar angry because they're not 2nd edition. He played a lot back in the day. I shit you not, he would never miss a chance to explain how the 2E rule worked, learning a new mechanic of 5th edition, and grumble about how the older mechanics are better, like, I'm sorry you chose to play in another 5E campaign, my man. Also, he just refused to pronounce Rhea's name properly, even after being corrected multiple times. It's a reference to— shut up. Her name's Rhea, not Rayarth. With the information beaten out of Amric, the party successfully raids the Van Thamper villa and discover an infernal puzzle box they had been keeping and presumably using for nefarious deeds. The party turns in the quest to Flaming Fist Commander Liara Porter, who pays them for their work and directs them to Candlekeep Library to solve the puzzle box and figure out why a city called Elturel just fucking vanished off the Sword Coast. Before departing Baldur's Gate, the party decided to spend their hard-earned gold on gear to prepare for their descent into Avernus. At the magic shop, each player had choices that would help their respective classes, and this is where the party's wizard comes in. Orlin was presented with a wand of magic missile, dark vision goggles, and a rod of raised dead. This one was an oopsie. In the midst of DMing a shopping spree for 6 whole-ass players, I misread an item and mistakenly offered a rod of raised dead, instead of the intended 3rd option, a much more level-appropriate rod of animate dead, a 3rd level necromancy spell that gives the caster an undead servant or 2. Keep in mind, they were level 4 or 5 at this point, and Raised Dead is a 5th level necromancy spell that resurrects the dead. Not something I wanted my players to have in a Hell campaign with emphasis on difficulty. This was brought to my attention that night after the session by Zydarius' player, and I DM'd Orlin to correct my mistake. I apologized and gave him the corrected options that would have been available at the time of purchase, expecting to retcon an honest error and move forward to a balanced party. Wrong move. This fucking offended him. He argued that I was punishing him for my mistake and that it just wasn't right to remove an item from the game. He felt he deserved to keep it just because it was a DM fuck-up. I kindly clapped back and tried to get him to understand that the Rod of Raised Dead wouldn't have even been an option in the first place, so a quick fix would allow us to get back to the intended game next session. After a few hours of back and forth on Discord, he finally gave up and took the Wand of Magic Missile in place of the Wand of Raised Dead, and remained just as sour as when it started. Silly me thought this would be the end of it, but holy fuck, the bullshit with D&D players can never be easy. For the next 3 sessions, the slightest hint of danger in combat comes their way, or someone gets knocked out and the wizard makes a comment like, "If only we had the rod," or "This wouldn't be a problem if we had the rod." He was called out on 2 separate occasions by myself and another player before it stopped. But the pettiness didn't even stop there. In combat, after getting the wand, he actively chose to use his spell slots to cast Magic Missile, purposefully wasting slots to prove a point, I guess. With this, on top of the other players' nonsense, I began to dread prepping. So I did the only thing you can do when struck with panic and anxiety. I set up a TPK and let them know that would be the last session due to DM mental health, and that I was taking a break from Dungeons & Dragons. During this final combat, the wizard decides to use all 7 charges of his Wand of Magic Missile out of spite. A wyvern bursts from the chest of Hrothgar for backstory reasons, threads are left untied, and most of the party dies in Avernus. We didn't even get past chapter 2 of the book. I'm pretty proficient in speedrunning D&D groups. I leave off on good terms with everyone in the group except for the wizard, who, after the campaign, sends me this video with total confidence. I immediately block him and sit there baffled that some grown-ass adults function this way. Now, with retrospect and some more D&D experience under my belt, there were 100 ways I could have solved this issue without retconning or taking toys from man-children. It could have been stolen and they had to fight for it back, it could have had 1 charge left, it could have been fake, it even could have been cursed for fuck's sake. But I firmly believe he was actually too insane and entitled to keep around. Sure enough, I have plenty of PTSD from this table, and D&D is a hard game to enjoy. But if played right, it can be just a hoot and a half. But if you agree some of these players were insane, please let me know in the comments. I need your opinion.